okay.
Someone's sitting in that chair.
What is it about the concept of invisibility itself that is so fascinating, do you think?
To me, it's the very absence of a character. You know, a lot of times if you talk about an iconic horror villain, whether it's Dracula or Freddy Krueger, whoever it is, there's always some visual iconography that you can pin on that character, you know, whether it's Freddy's glove or Dracula's cape, whatever it is. The thing with the Invisible Man is it's his absence that makes him scary, and I didn't want to put a hat and bandages on the Invisible Man. To me, that's a movie called The Visible Man. Like, what I wanted to do with this film is really modernize it and make something that was scary for modern audiences who've been desensitized to a lot of horror films by pointing the camera at an empty room and suggesting that an empty room was threatening somehow.
And then how did that sort of cross with the idea of a woman coming out of an abusive relationship?
When I started writing it and I was thinking about that idea of invisibility, I was like, okay, so we don't want to make the Invisible Man the central character. We want to see this film through the eyes of the person who's being stalked by the Invisible Man. And so I decided it should be this woman, and slowly it came together. She'd come out of this relationship, and it sort of seemed to dovetail nicely into that theme of coming out of a really abusive relationship and trying to hide out, feeling like there was a threat over your shoulder that you could never quite see. You know, that thing that women have to do, like walk to their car at the ready, you know, with their keys ready to go. Like, that is kind of what this movie's about.
How did sort of Leigh present it to you, and how did you talk about the character? And also, he's writing it as a man. Do you feel like he got it, and did he also like feed off you for like points of view?
Both, yeah. I feel like he did really get it in an extraordinary way. And at the same time, one of the first things he kind of said to me was like, I really want you to help me. I want you to be my co-writer. I want you to come in. We'll talk about the scenes. Let's write them together. Let's figure this out and bring your female perspective to it, or bring your perspective as who you think you might be in this relationship. And that was incredibly, I mean, I hate to say it's generous because it's like, well, he probably shouldn't do that. Like, it's a good idea for the movie. But I was very like happy that he was taking that route, and that, because I wanted to talk about it too. I wanted to explore it.
If you've seen the movie, you'll see that the script is so solid, and it's a really fascinating story. And the fact that Leigh has written a script about a woman escaping, you know, an abusive relationship, and the aftermath of that, and the haunting of that, and what it does to you psychologically, just thought it's such a great premise. And also an incredibly important story that we should be telling nowadays.
I love the idea of an entertaining, scary movie. I love thrillers, I love horror. I love that stuff. I love sci-fi, but the idea that you can, yes, you could tell us, perhaps you could cloak it, you know, cloak that story and put something more meaty in the center of it, or an analogy or a metaphor, I think really makes for the best kinds of these movies.
What I love about it is that the metaphor of him being invisible is also the sense that this is the aftermath of what he did to her, in the same way that people have experienced, you know, PTSD or something like that long after they're out of the situation.
Yeah, exactly. I think that people, you know, from my research and from, you know, just talking to people, you know, I think there is definitely a sense of carrying that with you for a long time. That feeling of that you are changed, or that he might come back, or that he might pop back up, you can't quite get away from him, or that feeling in relationship, I think that is very common.
Is it challenging for you as a man to write from a woman's point of view? And did you also kind of glean insight from Elisabeth in getting the voice sort of right for Cecilia?
To answer the latter, I absolutely gleaned insight from Elisabeth Moss. She was my true collaborator on this film. You know, I almost felt like she was a co-writer, because she would bring this female perspective, and she would give me a lot of advice about what someone would do or not do in a certain situation, and I was obviously inviting that insight because I'm not a woman and have never been through these situations. So I definitely invited that. In terms of the writing before Elisabeth got on board, I think it's just about empathy. I don't believe in having to write characters that only reflect you. You know, I should be able to write about a young boy in Tanzania, or a young woman in Iceland or wherever the character is, as long as there's some universal human thing going on there, then you can speak to it.
What was sort of your knowledge of the whole, Invisible Man sort of franchise? I mean, it goes back 100 years or so. So what was your familiarity with it?
I wasn't too familiar at first, but once I read the script and did some research, I knew that it was a universal monster, like you said, that people have loved for a very long time. So I'm glad that we didn't try to alter the Invisible Man in any way. I think we just tried to reinvent it, and one of the ways we did that was adding Cecilia, who is a woman who has been abused physically, mentally, and emotionally, and she's trying to step outside of herself to save her own life, which I feel like is very sad, but also very beautiful, and hopefully it'll be inspiration to a lot of people.
One thing I like is that the movie makes you feel like everybody does have like another life. Like there is a life for that your character and her dad have been having, until all this starts to happen.
Right.
Did you talk with Leigh and Aldous about sort of the backstory of the characters a bit?
Yes, absolutely. I love Aldous. He's a great actor. And we were able to formulate a bond before going on set, so I think that was important. And I love that Leigh didn't do a stereotypical single mother and daughter, because that would have been very easy to do. A single mother and her daughter, and Cecilia's her best friend. It would have made sense, but I love that he was a single father, and it wasn't a stereotypical situation to why the mother wasn't present. I feel like it was all very strategic, and there was these small details that really made the movie come together, other than focusing on like the gaslighting and the domestic violence. There were different levels to it, which I appreciated.
Lizzie, Leigh and I spent an awful lot of time before we started shooting talking about what this relationship was like and what Adrian was like and what Cecilia was like in this dynamic, and so we were very specific about what we wanted. So it's in a way, even though he's not seen, we needed to make that presence so ominous even when he wasn't on screen. We needed for him to feel throughout the movie that he is very much a character that is a huge threat. And I think that all of that is fundamentally down to Leigh and the movie that he's made, because it is quite disturbing, some of it.
This character, Adrian, is also sort of, he's almost the downside of success in a way. He's obviously accomplished and smart. Yeah. He's never had people say no to him, but yet he can't turn that into something positive in terms of his own relationships.
The research that I did on what these types of people, specifically narcissists, and what the behavior is like, it was quite eye-opening that it doesn't have to do with success. It's kind of so much more complicated than that, and it's about ownership, and it's about manipulation, it's about enjoying the game that is being played. And that I find quite terrifying, that's what I feel like we've all come across people that are narcissistic in some way, and it's sort of an extreme version of that.
I want to talk about the interesting role that you have, in that you're not on screen a whole lot, obviously. No. You're the Invisible Man, but you are, the presence is there, like throughout everything. So tell me what grabbed you about the script first and foremost, and playing a character who's not there.
The size of how much I would be on screen kind of wasn't something that I'd really thought through in a way. And I didn't actually know how we were going to do the Invisible Man bits. Until I spoke to Leigh about a month before we started, and I called him and I said, Leigh, how are we gonna do the stuff? He went, we'll just like, yeah, it'll be fine, yeah. And then I turned up in Australia and they showed up with this green morph suit and said, put this on. So immediately regretted signing on to the project. But I think it was mainly the script that sort of made me want to do it.
So you did get to wear the green screen suit.
I did, and it's the most embarrassing thing you could ever wear. It's the number one, it's made for like a 6-year-old. It's so small, and you can't wear anything underneath it. So when you put it on, everyone's demeanor kind of changes around you, and there's an awful lot of this that happens, sort of, no one likes to look below your neck. But it was, yeah, it was quite the experience doing all of that.
I think I read in the production notes, I think you said that this is probably the most physical role you've done. Yeah,
definitely.
So again, talk about, how much of that did you want to push yourself to do? How much did you say, okay, I have to let the stunt person take over?
Leigh called me before I went out to Australia when I was shooting Handmaid's Tale, and he was like, I want to talk to you because I feel I really would like you to do as much as possible, and I just wanted to like gauge your feelings on that and if you were willing and like what you thought. And I basically was like, I would love to do as much as possible because I think that's going to be the best thing for the film. Of course, I'm not going to be a martyr, and ultimately we should decide what looks best on camera. So if there's something that, you know, for example, in the big fight in the kitchen, it's my stunt double Sarah who gets thrown across the table. That's mainly because I can't do that. It's gonna look awesome when she does it. It's gonna look amazing and brutal, and as it should. I don't have that skill. It's a whole skill set that I don't have. So we decided to use her when it was like, you know, we needed to make this look awesome, and as much as possible use me as well. So it was kind of a real collaborative effort between the stunt team and me.
And then the other challenge is lots of scenes where you're acting against nothing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I do that, like, you know, I have a really big imagination, so for me, that's a lot of what acting is pretending that something is there or isn't there, and it's kind of all about just imagining.
How challenging was it to play sort of off nothing, you know, especially in those fight scenes?
Yeah, it's challenging to have to imagine the unimaginable, and there's nothing there to work off of. I mean, I think Leigh and the stunts team and even the special effects team did a great job of trying to explain or show us what would be happening in the movie, but you really have to dig deep to really feel how you would feel and how the character would feel in those situations, to where you're getting tortured by an invisible man. It's hard.
When you look at your projects, this or Shirley or Handmaid's Tale, is there like themes that come up that you realize, oh, these kind of all are on the same wavelength?
What I see as an actor or as a producer are stories about women that are very human, about women that are vulnerable and strong, that are very intelligent and make stupid choices, that are, you know, that are human and have all of the layers that we have as men and women. And so for me, that's a common theme, and that's what I look for in characters.
The character, his name is Griffin, and so we do have a little homage in there to the original movie and the H.G. Wells book, because the character is Griffin in that. Did you go back to those at all, just for...
I did a little bit to the original source material. I tried to avoid all the subsequent iterations of any invisibility, any movies. I avoided all that, but I did go back to the source material, the novel, and the original film. There's a reason why characters stick around for a long time. There's something about them that resonates with the popular imagination. We want that power. We want to be invisible, and it's a superpower. It's like the power of flight. And so that's what I took from the book, and the way I kind of shoehorned it into my story was to say that this individual is like a malignant narcissist. You know, he was already that way. So you give that personality this power, what's going to happen? This is not someone who became a monster through invisibility. This is someone who was a monster. So yeah, that was definitely interesting to go about that way, and wanted to have that nod. I mean, with all the character names, nothing is offhand. Like Cecilia means blind, so that was something that I wanted to get into the script, and all the character names have some meaning towards who they are in the movie.